Hello there, Internet. I've muted the computer, so this is the second video I've recorded in a batch of videos. And in this video, I want to discuss genres, specifically science fiction. Because I think it's interesting to discuss the nature of genres and what they mean. And this was prompted by something that happened actually a few months ago, but something I've been considering since then. Now, I've criticised booktube in the past. I've criticised it for being heavily focused on fantasy, specifically YA fantasy, and that weird YA romance fantasy trend that's been commonplace. And I've been looking for other channels. In fact, I've even been putting together a list and I've been watching a few of them, and I hope in the near future to make a video where I recommend different channels with different approaches to booktube. I think that'll be interesting, and I look forward to talking about them in some depth. One channel I did find, though, which I want to talk about now because it will not be in my recommended channels list, is Media Death Cult. Now, Media Death Cult is, at first glance, a really interesting science fiction focused book channel. And that was quite unique. I really enjoyed watching some of the first videos I saw with him. He's got a great camera presence. He's got a kind of a chatty persona that he gives where he's kind of off the cuff. It's clear that it's scripted, but it seems very unscripted, which is an interesting approach. It's something that I could try if I wanted to, but if I was to do that, it would feel a bit fake. Like, this is unscripted what I'm doing now, and it's a lot less active and joke-filled as the kind of stuff that Moid does, and that's intentional, because if I tried to do that, I'd have to script it out, and it would feel fake for me to do it. Now, I did script previous videos, and I do have notes I want to talk about. I've got a couple of things I want to write down, because otherwise I'll ramble on for 3 hours. But yeah, it was an interesting channel, and it had this strong focus on community, something that I also want to do, hence with my Discord being mentioned in pretty much every video and the link always being in the description, because that Discord chat is pretty much my only contact with the outside world at the moment. We're still in lockdown here in the UK. I don't get to speak to a great many people, but the people in that Discord I talk to every day, and they're fantastic people. And if you want part of that community, we talk about books, we talk about video games, we occasionally even talk about serious topics like politics, but that's kept in its own little room, and everyone's nice to each other about it, even though we all disagree on things. We've got members from across the political spectrum and from many different countries. So when we say different political spectrum, like, we'll have right-wing and left-wing people from different countries where right and left mean different things. So that's exciting. It gives you a chance to really drill down into what you believe and question a few of your preconceptions. But if you don't want that, you can just talk about books and video games and TV, because we've got rooms for that as well. And there are some people who purposely switch off the politics room, and good for them. There's no need to force that on anyone. So yeah, that was something that I wanted. And when I joined Moid's Discord, it seemed like that's what I was going to be getting. Everyone was fairly friendly, until I made a passing comment about how Star Wars isn't sci-fi. Moid had a tantrum like a child, and started getting very, very aggressive. I made it clear that all I was saying is, it's not sci-fi. I never said it was bad. I didn't mock anyone for liking it. I didn't say, you're not a real sci-fi fan if you like Star Wars. I said, Star Wars isn't sci-fi, because it's not. Moid didn't like that. And after he had his little tantrum, he calmed down and made it seem as though everything was fine. He just got a bit, overly emotional for no reason and just lost his temper, which I've done plenty of times. I'm not going to be a hypocrite and have a go at him for that. I've had stupid arguments about fuck all before. I have ripped into people and had a go at them for stupid things that really I shouldn't have had a go at them for. And I've apologised for it. But then he shadow banned me. He kicked me from the channel, banned my account from rejoining, and he did that after I finished my conversation with him, after I spent another 20 minutes talking with other people in his Discord, having pleasant conversations, discussing the nature of genres and classifications of books, where we had a decent back and forward. We disagreed on a few things, but we enjoyed the conversation. It was pleasant. And then I logged on the following day and found out that he had banned me whilst I was in bed. That's pathetic and childish. And yes, I am calling you out, Moid. That was sad. It was pathetic. You're a child. You're a child who can't handle someone telling you that one of the franchises you like isn't the genre label you've attached to it. Isn't that just so pathetic? I was hoping for so much more. Members of your own Discord were shocked and appalled. People who happened to also share Discords with me, because I wasn't just a member of yours, I was a member of many, many others, Moid, and there's a lot of crossover in the booktube community. So when other people whose names I recognise, people I was actively talking to in your Discord, saw that I was gone, and they happened to be in, say, Daniel Green's Discord, or even my Discord, and I commented and sent them private messages going, I'm apparently banned. They went, what? What? How? That's not Moid. That's not how he acts. I went, well, apparently it is, because I'm banned. So, no one expected this of you. This is how sad it is. But let's not dwell on that for too long. Why do I say it's not sci-fi? Because unlike Moid, who has this idea, this concept, it's something he's repeated on his channel before, it's something he's said in his Discord before, and that is that if you think something is sci-fi, then it is sci-fi. And at first I thought it was just him trying to be inclusive and trying not to be too hardline, because there is a different level to what is and isn't sci-fi. He's wrong. He's pointedly wrong. It's a nice sentiment, but it's wrong. There is sci-fi, and then there's fantasy, and then there's something that's kind of in the middle. That doesn't make everything that you're describing science fiction. It's just not. A lot of the books that Moid reads are fantasy books set in space, and that means that he can snub fantasy, he can turn his nose up at fantasy and claim as if he reads sci-fi, but he doesn't really care about fantasy. He does, he reads plenty of fantasy. It's just he doesn't like medieval fantasy. So, what is sci-fi then? Because if I'm going to throw shade at someone like this, I'm going to mock Moid the way I am, and yes, I am, I'm calling him out and I am mocking him, then I surely have to be able to explain what science fiction is and give a succinct definition, and I'm going to do that right now. Science fiction is fiction about science. I know, where the hell did I come up with that heady idea? Where did I come up with that wild definition of science fiction? Fiction about science. Fucking hell. Blows your goddamn mind, doesn't it? But yeah, that's what it is. So, a good example. This is science fiction. This, as far as I know, I've not read it yet. I'm going to be reading it this month. This is a book about, I believe, travelling at half the speed of light or something like that, or approaching the speed of light. And it is all about the scientific principles. It is a book where you have a question, you have a scientific question, and you move towards the answer. And that's all you ever do with science fiction. You just ask a question. What if blah? And then you do that thing. So, this case, it's what if we could travel close to the speed of light, or approach the speed of light? another science fiction, because they're not all based in space, though people seem to think a spaceship makes something immediately science fiction. It doesn't. Jurassic Park. Is this science fiction? You could argue it is, but you could also argue it's not. And there's a good argument for this. Is this science fiction? Because it's asking, what if we cloned dinosaurs and brought them back from extinction? That is clearly a scientific principle. It's clearly something that is theoretically possible or imaginable within science, and we're exploring the ramifications of it. But it's not written like a science fiction. It's written like a horror novel. This is a monster horror novel. You have dinosaurs who are loose and attacking people, basically. And this is no different than, say, Alien, if Alien was a book. It's still a horror. Now, Alien is about an alien in a spaceship, and a lot of people will call that sci-fi. But it's really a horror. Now, you could make this a fantasy horror and make it a werewolf, and it's the same basic principle. It's the same narrative structure. So is this horror? That's up for you to decide. I think this is both. This could easily be put on your horror shelf if you feel it reads more like horror. You could put this with other horror books, and it would be at home there. Or you could put it with sci-fi books, and it would be at home there. I think this bridges the line, and it's okay. Books are allowed to be more than one thing. I think it would be foolish to claim this is definitely not sci-fi. But there are other things, like another good example, and again, it's a book that I've not read, it's a book that I only know by reputation, and that's The Wolf. Is this sci-fi? Now this is one that people will not think of as sci-fi, because it's not scientific in a lot of respects. It's, if anything, more medieval fantasy than anything else. But maybe it's also sci-fi, because the entire idea of this is, what if the Neanderthals never died out? What if we didn't kill them off? What if Homo sapiens and Homo neanderthalis, instead of one killing the other and one going extinct, they coexisted and developed societies? Then in that case, is this not anthropological science fiction? I think that's stretching it a little. I would say this should, by all rights, be classified as sci-fi. But it doesn't read anything like sci-fi, and a science fiction fan is going to get very little out of this. Because it reads like a fantasy novel. It reads like a traditional medieval high fantasy novel. So, is it medieval high fantasy? Maybe. You've got to question where you draw the lines. I would say modern science fiction, like Leviathan Wakes, is a great example of how science fiction has become less and less about the science fiction and more about the drama and the interpersonal relationships. This is not science fiction in the way that old sci-fi was. This does not ask any real major scientific questions. I mean, it has some things positive, like, what if we colonised the solar system and the colonies developed their own identities, their own national identity, their own national pride, and became independent nations? That, I suppose, is the what if it's asking. There's also the potential what if we found and this is a mild spoiler for part of the book, what if we found a thing that is potentially an alien superweapon, and how would people respond to it? Those are the things it asks. And I suppose you could claim that that makes it science fiction, but it focuses not on answering those questions, but instead following the characters. So is this more of a drama, which is honestly something that people don't really talk about? Drama as a genre of book is almost completely ignored. Most people don't consider it its own genre and don't label things as drama. They do it with TV and film, but they don't do it with books, and I don't know why. Let's face it, this is a space opera, and space opera was originally a term coined to describe space-based serialized stories that felt like a soap opera with a veneer of sci-fi. And a soap opera is a serialized drama. So this is drama in space. It's a space opera. And we will use that term happily. Like sci-fi fans will call this a space opera and will have no issues calling it that. I would say this is a much lighter sci-fi than something like this. But they're both sci-fi. And this is on the crunchy side of modern sci-fi. A lot of modern sci-fi does not go into as much detail with the scientific elements as this book does. This is very, very sci-fi heavy. It discusses inertia, gravity, and biochemistry in a lot of detail. It takes the science and wears it proudly. A lot of modern sci-fi, the science is very much in the background. And that's where sci-fi stops feeling like sci-fi. It's where it starts taking on its own kind of middle ground. A great example of this, I think, is Star Trek. Now, Star Trek isn't sci-fi in the traditional sense. Now, it works on the ideas of science. It has science as a focal point, but it doesn't explain anything. No one explains how the deflectors work, or how the transporters work, or the replicators. No one explains even the communicators, or the holodeck. All of these pieces of technology are never explored. And when they are explored, they're not explored in a scientific way. No one comes up with a scientific issue with them and then explores it. They instead come up with a social or dramatic issue and use the scientific element as a framing device, or just a little bit of flavour. Really, most of the science in Star Trek is just technobabble. It's just setting. It's not theme. The theme on Star Trek is very much social and political sciences, which are still sciences. It is a discussion on politics and society, and that's what it's always been. It explores social questions and the ideas of morality, and when we should intervene, and what we and questions on what we believe and how we think, which is still science, but it's very much social science. Star Trek, if you base it on the fact that it's a spaceship in space using technology, is not sci-fi at all. It is sci-fi because it is political science and social science commentary, and that's the science that it's exploring. It just uses the space stuff as a framing device and a setting, which is great. I love Star Trek. Star Trek's fantastic. The same's true of a lot of other things. Dystopian novels are often considered sci-fi, especially on booktube. The booktube community will label anything that's slightly dystopian or has a spaceship or any vague technology as sci-fi. Like, the amount of YA fantasy readers, when they're told to read a sci-fi, will pick up a graphic novel that has a spaceship in it and think that counts, is ridiculous. Dystopians, a lot of them are very focused around social commentary and political science. So they are science fiction in that regard, but it's not the same thing. It is not the same as exploring the ideas of theoretical physics and what could happen, or exploring what might happen if an AI runs amok. Like, those are very, very different ideas. So dystopians, yeah, they do have scientific principles, but I think of them as a different genre. And a lot of people do. But I would have no issue with someone saying dystopian is a subgenre of sci-fi. It's just a different take on it. It's asking for a different perspective. Marvel. Comic books. Are they science fiction? Could you argue they're not, by the principles a lot of people use? Like, science fiction is fictional science, and what's Iron Man if not fictional science? It's about a robot and a jetpack suit and things along those lines, but none of it's explained. Yeah, none of it's explained. None of it is properly considered. We've got impossible things that happen, and then they include magic just out of the blue. So it's fantasy, surely. But a lot of people still think of some of it as sci-fi, especially the ones that are based around inventors and technology. Things like Iron Man and Spider-Man, and even to a lesser extent Batman. They don't use powers. They don't use special supernatural things most of the time. Spider-Man wasn't given a magic spell that turned him into Spider-Man. He was bitten by a radioactive spider, or in later versions, a genetically engineered spider, or whatever the hell. And really, it's not science fiction. While they're using science terms, all they're doing is using terms that are vaguely sciencey in place of magic. Because a radioactive spider would be a dead spider. And a radioactive spider bite would either do nothing or kill you. Simple as that. We know this. We know that radioactive doesn't mean magic. But the comic will take the word radioactive, or the word genetic engineering, or the word quantum, and will stick it in front of something and just make it magic. It's now magic. Quantum means magic. Radioactive means magic. So it's not science fiction. It's fantasy with the flavour of science over the top. And that brings me to Star Wars. Because Star Wars is the very epitome of this. Star Wars is not sci-fi at all. It's not even sci-fi in the way Star Trek is. There is almost no social commentary or political science issues. If you look at the politics of Star Wars, it's just as unrealistic as the science of Star Wars. Star Wars has no basis in science at all. It's things in space shooting plasma bolts at each other. For fuck's sake, the spaceships even make roaring noises as they move through space, and there's somehow air resistance and even a gravity in space. There's a clear up and down in space because everything's on the same plane. That ships come in, they're always facing each other. You never get a ship come in and they're like that. That never happens. Not in Star Trek. Not in Star Wars, sorry. But yeah, Star Wars is fantasy. It is blatant fantasy. And anyone who pays any close attention to it can tell it's blatant fantasy. It is a story about a farm boy who has his family killed, is trained by the wise old wizard who is in hiding, who then dies at the pivotal moment, so this spurs the hero onto his journey, where he faces down against the evil emperor sorcerer who shoots lightning from his fingers and fights him with a magic sword in his giant doom fortress. It's space wizards. If you don't think that that's fantasy, you clearly don't know what fantasy is. Because that's about as fantasy as you can get. That is the hero's journey and the legend of King Arthur mixed together. That's what that is. That's what the story is of Star Wars. It's King Arthur and the hero's journey. And all they've done stylistically is taken the old serials that the likes of Indiana Jones are based off, and samurai films, and mix some of those elements together, and then place them in space with magic laser swords. That's all they've done. There is no science in there. None of the spaceships follow any scientific principles. None of the technobabble is even vaguely correct. None of the robots are scientifically accurate in any way, shape or form. They don't operate in any way that would be consistent with our understanding of science. None of the planets are scientifically accurate. Almost every planet has only one fucking biome. There are forest planets, there are desert planets, there are ocean planets, but no planets that actually have a change in climate depending on where on the planet you are. No different biomes anywhere. That is so unrealistic. It may as well just be a magical plane. You may as well have a D&D adventure where you're going to the plane of forest. It's the same thing as the forest moon of Endor. It's the same thing. It is fantasy. Pure and simple fantasy. Now, does that mean it's not good? No. If you enjoy Star Wars, great. You enjoy it. I mean, unless you're watching the Disney films, in which case, see a doctor, you've probably had an aneurysm. They're not good. If you think they're good, there's something very, very wrong. And I'm sorry. But that aside, if you like Star Wars, cool. Star Wars is fine. I'm not a massive fan myself. I think it's a bit too trope heavy. It's not for me. But there's also elements I really enjoy. I really enjoyed the Knights of the Old Republic games. They were really good. Yeah, I have no issue with the universe, and you can enjoy Star Wars as much as you like. But it's not sci-fi, and if you're a Star Wars fan, you're not a sci-fi fan. And that's not me gatekeeping. It's not me telling you that you don't belong or you're not allowed to join our club or anything like that. I'm not trying to make this into some weird cult. Unlike Moid, who starts every video with vague little in-jokes about his secret little club and these pretend elements as if he's running a cult, where he starts every video going, "Join us." It's like, yeah, we get it. It's supposed to be a cult. But it actually is a fucking cult. Because if you go there and disagree with anything he says, if you have a difference of opinion, or if you even dispute which genre something belongs to, you immediately get kicked off. Because he can't accept the idea of someone disagreeing with him. It's quite sad, unless they disagree in specifically the ways that he's already previously said you're allowed to disagree. Because that's acceptable, because he's already said so. So, you're allowed to dislike a book that he likes if he says, oh, it's okay to not like that. But if you said the book was bad, he'd probably have a go at you. And let's face it, I didn't even say Star Wars was bad. I just said it wasn't sci-fi, and he had a hissy fit. So who even knows? Like, I'd love to see what would happen if you went on and said some of his favourite books weren't very good. I guarantee you'd get banned. I'd even put money on it, which is sad, really. But yeah, that's what I have to say on genres anyway, in the nature of sci-fi. I think it's important to know which genres are which. Because labels only have a purpose if we use them correctly. If we label everything as sci-fi, then when someone says, oh, I'm a sci-fi fan, that's meaningless. Like, modern day, if someone says, I'm a sci-fi fan, people just think that means I like watching things set in space. Like films set in space. That's not science fiction. That's things in space. I want sci-fi fan to mean actual science fiction fan. In the same way that if you say you're a gamer, it means that you play video games. And I expect, if someone says, I'm a gamer, I expect them to actually play video games and know something about video games. If you say you're a gamer and your entire repertoire of gaming is playing Candy Crush on your phone, you're not a fucking gamer. If you say you're a gamer and you don't know who the Super Mario Brothers are, you're not a fucking gamer. You see what I mean? Like, if I mention the name Ubisoft and you don't know who that is, if you don't know that Ubisoft is a major developer that makes video games, one of the biggest in the world, then you're not a gamer. Like, even if you play games and you don't really care about gaming news, you don't follow the industry, you at the very least are going to recognise the fucking logo and the name because it's going to pop up on your screen all the time. Like, it's things like that. It's not gatekeeping to expect people to actually belong to the group they claim they belong to. And that's the problem that I think we had on that Discord, is that for all of his claims that he wants a community. What he actually wants is an echo chamber. And he wants to claim that he won't exclude anyone by excluding everyone who disagrees. And that's a problem. But I did start out saying that I wanted to find YouTube channels that discussed science fiction and horror books because they're rare. I have found a few, and in a future video I'm going to share them, because I'm going to do a video where I find some booktube channels I think are particularly good, and I'm going to throw them out there so that other people can get a chance to see them, and we can perhaps build more of a community based around different kinds of books. Because whilst I'm struggling to admittedly get through books at the moment, I'm still enjoying the community, and I want to start reading more. And I don't want to just read the same things everyone else is reading, especially because, honestly, I couldn't give two shits about the YA fantasy romance crap that everyone's reading. Like, I don't care to read that stuff. It does not interest me in the slightest. And I know I can't be the only one out there that feels that way. So, hopefully you'll find some use out of that, and hopefully this video was entertaining, but I'm going to stop there because I'm starting to rabbit and repeat myself. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.